Friends, I am Vadim Open Yoga. Today, we are considering Yoga Smarana.
In other words, there is such a direction as Yoga Smarana, or Yoga of Remembrance, one of the very serious components of your yoga training. Now we're going to talk about this. I remind you, OpenYogaClass.com, AITempUniversity.com are sites. We are at the Black Sea Festival, a joint project. Ask around. So, you and I must very clearly realize another component in what is called yoga training, and the name of yoga is mindfulness. That is, there are such things that we constantly say that there is yoga, reading aloud. It is an integral part of your education, the acquisition of knowledge in yoga, to make your brains concentrate, and so that the teaching reaches you. Finally, there is yoga, writing, or when you not only perceive something, but also write it down by hand. There are also a lot of positive moments. There is yoga, roughly speaking, questioning oneself. That is, all sorts of such methods of activating the mind, strengthening its concentration, control over unconscious thought forms. Or as in Patanjali in Rita, on the surface of the booth. That is, remember, Patanjali defined yoga as someone's lie not ratha. Control of thought forms on the surface of buddhi. Well, it's easy to say control, but how? How to control? What should I do? And that's just yoga reading aloud, yoga writing, yoga questioning. Those wrenches, then, that allow you to unscrew or tighten this nut in your head, yes. Do you know how it is so that unnecessary thoughts do not arise or direct them in the right direction? But as you understand, no. Yes, then yoga diksha, or yoga of knowledge transfer. You remember this example with Mowgli. Of course, you can reproduce the whole yoga yourself. Yoga itself insists on this, that your higher self is super powerful. And you can get any result that has ever been obtained by someone. Another conversation is that it takes a huge amount of time, and it is extremely difficult to do it. So it is prescribed not to waste time, but to do all the preparatory work yourself, until you meet like-minded people who have already moved a little further along this path, so that in practice with them you can prepare even more for a meeting with those who will bring you even closer to knowledge. So that by the time you meet your teacher, you are fully prepared. That is, you did not sit waiting for the teacher to come and do all the auxiliary work for you, but you yourself made active movements in this direction. And in fact, the knowledge that you get by reading certain texts yourself, or listening to them read by those who have been practicing them for a long time, extremely accelerates your training in yoga. And that is, here is the factor, as we call it, the text turns, well, began to turn into such an independent separate practice. If you feel the need for higher knowledge of yoga, but there is no teacher, look for the text. There is a text, start learning it, cramming it, pronouncing it out loud, rewriting it. Carry a handwritten text with you. And it's generally very. Well, even in some yoga schools, as it seems now, not only in India, but in other countries, such as Tibet there, and so on. It was generally an integral part. Wait for the teacher to come to you, or you will find a teacher, and something higher will be transmitted to you. Finally, we touched on such a very strange thing too that, strictly speaking, it's like there is a regular phone, and you can call somewhere. Imagine that in meditation, you start thinking about something, and suddenly, as if from nowhere, some revelations come to you. It didn't reach you, but suddenly it did. That is, such a thing is often described in the same India, that, as they say, you get some kind of correct thought transmission from those yogs who may be at a distance from you, but you somehow tune into this. On this wave, or I don't know how to say, how to call it, yes. Finally, it is often described in the same yoga diksha that some of you can experience very strong dreams, where it is not clear whether it was a dream or whether someone tried to teach you in a dream. Well, now I don't want to touch on this, because now we have to consider the yoga of mindfulness with you. Why is it extremely important? Because whatever initiation you receive, whatever you study, whatever you read or write, all these things are good. But they should lead to what, in general, was originally prescribed in the Vedas, namely remembrance. If you do not remember what you have studied before or what you have experienced, then this becomes a serious obstacle to the study of yoga. And in fact, the method of mindfulness is the main method in yoga. It is impossible to understand any other sections of yoga, such as Raja Yoga, Karma Yoga, if you are not working with the method of remembering. Or, in other words, in order to know how the world works right now, here you are faced with some objects and phenomena. According to the law of karma, in fact, you were the cause of what you have now. Therefore, what is necessary? It is necessary, as it were, to unscrew your whole life back and have this ability of remembering what happened before. In the same way, if you encounter anything during your life, then it would be very good, well, to recall those states that you experienced in yoga, those texts that you read, those teachings, instructions that were before that. Unfortunately, this is the scourge of modern civilization, clip thinking. People don't remember anything. People can only perceive a video clip if it lasts less than 3 minutes and immediately forgets about what. People start reading the page until they reach the end. They forget what they started about. That is why memory training is actually the basis of meditation. In general, how many people say all sorts of necessary and unnecessary words about meditation? It would be nice to learn to meditate. Well, it would be nice. And what should I do? And then some kind of, vague reasoning begins, thinking good will be good. Or well, meditation methods, or in yoga, it is called dhyana yoga. In other words, what is called meditation in the West is called dhya yoga in yoga. A lot, but you have to realize that mindfulness is the basis of everything. That is, the retention of some idea. Well, or an extreme case, holding the lack of an idea. Here is no idea. You remember your condition when you have no idea. That is, without the method of mindfulness, neither in meditation, nor in mind control, nor in your training, you will not go further. First of all, you will simply forget, and the deep meaning of some of these moments will not reach you. Secondly, there is no pratyahara without the method of remembrance. Or in yoga, it is also called disconnecting the senses from objects that, well, are perceived by these senses. That is, if you go, say, on a bus, in the subway or in a car, and someone nearby will be obsessively listening to the radio, or talking on the phone, there, or arguing, swearing, it will distract you extremely, irritate you. And every attempt to say to myself, yes, I can't hear, but I don't care, they practically don't work. But it's a completely different case. You are reading a detective story at the same time. And your consciousness is, as it were, pulled out of reality and transferred to this detective story. You may not even notice what's going on. And if there is no detective, then, of course, you can go, as it were, to the land of remembrance. For example, try to remember. The same Yoga Sutra was danced or some other things. In other words, it turns out that when you live in memory, you stop living in the universe around you. Accordingly, you are approaching the control of your consciousness, the control of your senses. And that is, it is necessary to develop mindfulness by all means. Well, immediately there are several such purely practical ways of what to do. Well, remember the saying, repetition is the mother of learning. If you are learning something new, return to what you have already gone through as often as possible. That is, at the beginning of the next lesson, always try to remember what happened before. And try yourself without the help of any records there. Although at the initial stage it is possible to use recordings, but it is best to remember without it. Train your memory, let's say, sit in meditation, remember everything in your yesterday. That's from the moment you woke up to the moment you fell asleep. Another way. If you are reading a book, read 2 or 3 books at once. And so, read a page in one, then read a page in another, then in the third. And just like that in a circle. It's clear that you just dive into one, then another. Here's some time of such stupidity, you start so opanky. But what was before that? Here it is, and the whole bestial nature of your mind is creeping out. Sometimes it's elusive, the bestial nature of the mind. There are many other methods, but the fact is that if you do not rely on the factor of remembrance, well, to put it mildly, everything else is useless. Finally, I would like to have another one here. You can give us a microphone so that we can count. Well, or here it is right here, as close as possible to the cameras. Here is as close as possible to the cameras so that you can hear some pieces from, well, in particular, Shivachandra's book, about the importance of the method of remembering. Of course, there are still a lot of excerpts on this subject in different texts. Please.
Shukta Shiva Chandra Vinava Bhattacharya, Tantra Tattva, or Principles of Tattva. The Principles of Tantra, Chapter 4, the practice of Gayatri. The function of the Antakaran, consisting of memory, is called Chito. In the field of practice, Chito takes the first place. Remembrance of the mantra and the Supreme, contemplation of the meaning of the mantra, meditation on the Supreme, and all related subjects are achieved through processes related to the function of the cheat, and by skipping a small piece. If something has not been perceived once, its recollection is impossible.
Aha, thanks a lot. In other words, you will find many references to the importance of mindfulness in various sources. And until then, well, because often people come and say, well, I don't know how to work the mind. Well, I don't know how to get rid of my bestiality. Well, everything seems to be fine, but what to do, right? Here. Yes, to practice, and to practice at first glance what, in general, you could apparently practice without yoga, namely, mindfulness, your mindfulness. Let's do this small part, so, yes, we are now let's do the open part. Let's finish. Yes, we've already finished, right. Today we have with you the 20th of October, 2013 year. My name is Vadim Zaporozhtsov, I teach yoga. This is our seminar from the Chakra Cycle. And at this seminar today, we are going to consider the Anahata Chakra, or the heart center. Let me remind you that we have previously reviewed and studied, respectively, the Muladhara Chakra, Svadhisthana Chakra, Manipura Chakra, and now we have reached the Anahata Chakra. So, those of you who have not seen the previous ones are not familiar with the previous seminars. You can get acquainted with them on the website of the course OpenYoga.ru or on the website OpenYoga.ru. Now, we will go with you to examine the Anahata Chakra, the heart chakra. In general, it should be said that this is one of the key chakras in work for a modern person, and after the seminar, you will understand why such important attention is paid to the Anahata Chakra. But before we go along with you now in our usual course, let's read everything that ancient sources, or certain authoritative commentators tell us. Let's outline this situation with you. So, at the base of our body, as yoga teaches, there is the energy of our life, the energy of Kundalini. At the top of our head, or somewhere in the upper part of the head, our single consciousness manifests. Both energy and consciousness are, in fact, a manifestation of a single prana that supports our body in a viable state. In other words, the scheme is as follows. We have our higher self. A thread of prana stretches from our higher self out of space and out of time, which, upon reaching space and time, localizes with our bodies and, as it were, splits into two poles. I'll take it. Yes, I'm very sorry, the correspondence student has a terrible connection. We need to either put that camera here, because one of them doesn't work. Most likely this. They hear. Okay, yes, no, you're what? Come on. One of them. Yes, yes, yes. Let's switch places. Aha. Come on, there's a little pause now. It may even be very good. For now, I'm going to use this pause for some kind of advertising. As they say, pause. According to our tradition, friends, we have all classes and all seminars, all lectures, everything should be recorded. Moreover, now we are introducing such a provision that everything goes with an internet broadcast. In other words, we don't start classes until we set up an internet broadcast. Therefore, in the future, if you are unable to physically attend certain seminars, then you will be able to do it through, respectively, the internet. Yeah, via the internet, which in general, well, it will expand your capabilities. It will significantly expand your capabilities. So that's why Now this issue is being worked out purely technically. How do we do it all? But in any case, you can connect online. Or then get a recording of this or that seminar, classes and lectures. This is one of the most important milestones in modern life, perhaps, when we are sitting here with you now, studying this seminar. And people are connecting to us all over the globe in order to participate with us in a single mental field. Well, is there a broadcast there? Duplicate, because duplicate, the connection disappears. Through one, through the other. One pause. Please don't let us. So, it means, once again, the scheme. At the base of our body is our energy, at the top of the head. Somewhere our consciousness is connected, the consciousness of energy, by a central channel. On the central channel of the strung chakra, like beads on a string. And today, we are going to consider the chakra that is located in the heart region. But I don't understand the heart region. You know, this is the middle, from the word middle. Not from the word heart, but from the word middle. Here we have the center, the middle of our chest. If you let's all touch this area with your fingers and start massaging it in a circle, listening carefully to the sensations. Then sooner or later, you will find the most sensitive point in the chest. Well, that is, the echo from touching this point will be stronger than a little to the left, a little to the right, a little higher, or a little lower. Purely subjectively, individually, you will feel. And now, if you draw a line parallel to the ground, then it means that the line that enters this point will cross the area of your spine, or the area of the central canal somewhere. And it is claimed that the Anahata chakra, or heart center, is located at this intersection point, or the so-called air principle. This is an extremely important center. He is responsible, as yoga theory teaches us, for tactile sensations. And, let's say, in the future, you will see that such nayas, say, as meat yoga, some types of paired yogas. When you and your partner do, say, hatha yoga, kriya yoga or meditation, willy-nilly affects your tactile sensations and willy-nilly contributes to the activation of this chakra. That's how we're made. And that's exactly what we're going to do today with this chakra. But before we go any further, then I remind you that we will conduct this seminar together. My name is Vadim Zaporozhtsov. Alexander Zlobin helps me. I want to voice such general points once again. Friends, yoga is the most important life. The most important thing is something so grandiose, something that created the whole universe, something that created you, what you are. You are alive. And everything else is already, as you know, such mechanisms, gears, as this stream of life works directly in your bodies. Knowing these gears is extremely important and will help you solve a lot of problems and achieve a lot of results. But you have to understand, this is still an auxiliary, secondary knowledge. Let's say why, let's say, the theory of the chakras was developed to a greater extent, as it seems to us now, in medieval India. Well, or early medieval, well, up to the present day. And to a lesser extent, you will encounter certain direct indications of the chakras, say, in ancient sources, such as there at the Upanishad there, and so on and so on. Although, of course, there is also a large amount of knowledge veiled. That is, it is stated in such a language incomprehensible to the uninitiated. Therefore, from time to time, I encounter people, let's say in Moscow, who, to put it mildly, carry some nonsense. So I came to one yoga class, and the instructor, a fake instructor, went from one person to another with complete confidence and ranted, "So, your heart chunk is closed, but you have it open. Do you have anything else there?" In other words, I want to say right away, be very careful with this kind of prophets, who sees who has the heart chakra open there. Someone has it closed and so on, so on. With more in-depth clarification, as a rule, these people do not understand what they are talking about at all. But you know, there is such a thing, as if you know how to tell you. Such a purely psychological effect. Well, imagine you go, someone comes up to you, says, "I see your heart chakra is closed, right?" Just imagine a normal sane person. Of course you will shrink inside. Oh my God, yes, yes, you know, such verbal zombification is going on. People have picked up some theory, have taken it out of context, and are starting to use it for some sometimes not very good purposes. Yes, so, like any principle, the heart chakra is an extremely abstract concept on the one hand, and on the other hand, it is quite concrete through sensation. I remind you, you may not know any theory about the chakras at all. If you meditate on this area, practice other types of yoga, do all the appropriate exercises, then sooner or later, you will internally, intuitively rediscover the knowledge that has come down to us from these ancient sources. Therefore, first of all, we trust our feelings, and only then what we will hear, including in these respected treatises, that we will quote today. Remember, yoga is lively, beautiful, soft, inspiring and opening, but not zombifying, intimidating there, I do not know, enslaving. Therefore, if you come across some information about the chakras, which, well, in particular, on the Hata chakra, which somehow you will feel inner discomfort from this information, it is best to throw out this information. As a rule, this is the seventh water on the jelly of the person who does not understand anything about it. Here, if you do not understand something in ancient treatises, then remember, yes, that it is sometimes a play on words to correctly translate a particular treatise. And in the original, everything can sound completely different, with different colors and more attractive. Wonderful. And now let's go with you. Let's start by listening to what certain texts tell us about, respectively, the Anahata chakra. Sasha, please. Where do we start? So, I have prepared a picture here, which depicts the Anahata chakra in our version, as I understand it, of Avalon. According to Arthur Avalon's version, based on a treatise called The Shat Chakra, is not Upana. So let me explain what kind of picture it is. This is a lotus flower, respectively, with 12 petals. You know, like that, like our clock face. There is a very interesting figure inside. Two triangles, one with a vertex up, the other down, intersect, and form such a six-pointed star. And many other more such small details, which we will talk about a little later with you. But here's the key point, as it is considered to be the 12-petaled chakra. With this six-pointed one. Six-pointed by this figure. Will we show the part-time student? Yes, yes, yes. So, I will ask, then let's start with the non-Rupin chakra. Yes, that's a great idea. And, actually, I want to read you an excerpt from The Shar Chakra of Nina by Sir John George. No, he published it in his book Snake Power, and the author, of course, is very ancient. So, Manipura is meant above this, we have a chakra. Above this, there is a beautiful lotus in the heart of such a shining color as a bandhuka flower, with 12 cinnabar-colored letters from K-Dalth located in it. This lotus is called Anahata, and it is like the heavenly tree Kalpa, the tree of fulfillment of desires, which always gives more than you ask for. The Vayu area is smoky in color with 6 corners. Here meditate on the sweet and excellent, over the sweet and excellent four-armed Favana Bija, gray as a mass of smoke, sitting on a black antelope. Also meditate on the abodes of mercy located here, whose spotless Lord is shining like the sun. His 2 hands make a gesture that gives good and dispels the fear of the 3 worlds. Kakini is here, yellow as lightning, excited and blissful, 3-eyed, she is the benefactress of everything, dressed in all kinds of jewelry. In her 4 hands, she carries a noose and a skull, making a sign of blessing, driving away fear. Her heart is softened by the nectar she drinks. Yeah, great. So, this is us, right? Yes. Here in the pericarp of this lotus, a triangle-shaped mine, whose delicate body is like 10 million lightning bolts. Inside the triangle is a Shiva Linga called Bana Lingam. It is as shiny as gold, and there is a small hole in its head, like a jewel. This is the abode of Lakshmi. Meditating on this lotus, the heart becomes the master of speech. Similar to Shvarak, he is now able to protect and destroy worlds. This lotus is like a heavenly desire tree. The abode of Sharva Jivatman. It is decorated with Hamsa seams, which is like a steady candle flame in a windless place. The fibers surrounding the bases of this lotus, and illuminated by the area of the sun, are as beautiful as the sun's rays. The foremost among yogs, he becomes extremely attractive to women. He surpasses everyone in wisdom and nobility of actions. His feelings are completely under control. In intense concentration, his mind is completely absorbed in the Brahman consciousness. His inspired speech flows like a stream of pure water. In his essence, he is like Vishnu, and he is able to reach another body at will. Yeah. So, this was an excerpt from the text of Shat Chakra Nirpana. The next one that we will count. There is also Ananda Hari. Let's hear from Anand Hari how this center is described in the text of Anand Lahari. Please, in your Anahata lotus, I greet the amazing pair of Hamsa, residing in the minds of those great sages, who always enjoy the sweetness of the blossoming lot of consciousness. A sadhaka who meditates on Anahata becomes knowledgeable of all 18 sciences, discerning the valuable things in them, just as milk separates from water. Yeah, wonderful. So it was a piece from Anand Lahari. We will have the next piece. Power. No, but are there primary sources? So, there is Hiranda. Come on. Hiranda Samhita hat. Let's just hear what different sources are saying now, and then we'll start discussing it all. Please. It's okay. Hiranda Samhita. Harana wisely concentration on the element of air. The element of air is smoky in color, like an eye ointment. She is related to Ishvara and her Bijayamu. Concentrate on it in Anahata, fixing prana, and chitta there for 2 hours. It fights dharana wisely, making it possible to move through the air. It destroys diseases and prevents death. A practitioner of it will never perish from the air. This wisdom should not be revealed to someone who is crafty and has no devotion. If it is given to such people, it loses its power. Oh, Chanda! Truly, what I am telling you is true. There is the next temple, like a cella. After midnight, in a place where other creatures do not make noise, the yogi, covering his ears with his hands, inhale and hold his breath. In the right ear, he will hear various internal sounds, first similar to the sound of a cricket, and then to a flute, then to the roll of thunder, to the drum, to the bee, to the bell, to the brass gong, then to the trumpet, to the fanfare, to the maridanga drum, to the timpani, to the dunduki drum. By daily exercise in this kamhaka, these sounds will be known as the manifestation of the sound of anahata. There is a resonance in this sound. There is light in this resonance. And in this light enters. And thinking enters into this light and dissolves there. When thinking is absorbed, the highest cherry state is achieved. Success in this Kumbhaka Kramara contributes to the attainment of samadhi. And one more passage. Kumbhaka nodding is an exceptional delay. The breath of every living being, entering and producing the sound of so and leaving the sound of ham. These two sounds form the word soham, I am, that are hamsa, the Sanskrit hamsa years. 21,600 breaths are obtained in a day. 15 breaths every minute. Every living being unconsciously performs this unspoken mantra called Ajapa Gay. Ajapa Gari is repeated in 3 places, in Muladhara, in Anahata, and at the junction of both nostrils. Yeah, great. The following primary source. Shiva. Shiva Samhita, yes, please. What does the Shiva Samhita say about Anahata? Anahata is a lotus located in the heart area. Eat it deep, blood red. I cook the seed, 12 petals. Ha ha on cha jahan and the. In this lotus, there is a flame called Pana Lingam. Meditation on it acquires objects of the visible and invisible world. The Lord of the Lotus is Pinaki, the goddess of the one who always reflects on this lotus in his heart, desires heavenly deeds. He receives immeasurable knowledge, knows the past, present and future, having the ability of clairvoyance and clairaudience, and can travel through the air. He sees initiates and known as yogins, gains strength to hikari, and defeats everything that moves in the air. One who meditates daily on the hidden pangam attains in kikari and in hakar. Leaving the world at will. It is impossible to describe in words the importance of meditation on this lotus. Even gods like Brahma keep this method of contemplation a secret. Great? Well, well, well. So, there is also Yogasha. Yeah. Yoga is a religion. Chapter 9. Piercing the earth in Muladhara, the water in Manipur, the fire in Swadhisthana, the air in the heart, the ether above the heart, and the mind between the eyes. And so, passing all the way of Kula, you, odor, enjoy the union with your Lord Paramashiva in the secret lotus of Sahasral. Chapter 20. This is from Anda Hari Peace. All right, well, you still have to look there. So let's friends, look here. There is not much information about the chakras that is quite detailed enough. Well, actually, We have read almost everything from publicly available texts, such as Shiva Samhita, Hiranda Samhita, Hatha Yoga Pradipika, Ananda Lahari. And it is clear that the Shat chakra is not cut. It is clear that all these texts came from the same source because, well, in fact, both the style and the description are in general very similar. And apparently, in different yoga schools, somehow, different texts have been maintained to this day. Probably there are still texts that have not reached the Western reader proper. And only now maybe they are coming, since, actually. Well, first of all, these closed texts have been for many years. Secondly, the text has to go a long way before it gets to us. Sanskrit is translated into English, usually from English to Russian. Only recently has Sanskrit been translated into Russian. And look what a thing. Here is a very interesting remark in passing in one of the texts that we have read, that if this knowledge is given to non-devotees, then it loses its power. And you should always be very attentive to certain statements that you read here of this kind of text. Just like that, no one writes anything there. First of all, there was never enough paper. Here. Secondly, this kind of conciseness is such a distinctive feature of all yoga texts. In other words, any yoga text in this sense, it claimed to be the role of what you will reread again and again, reread and reread it, and correlate what is written there with the results of personal practice. Only when it all coincides, then you will, as it were, open up a new and new layer of knowledge. Therefore, it is necessary to treat this information about the chakras very, very carefully. In other words, you should understand that there are such very tricky defenses on the spiritual path. For us, they seem strange and not obvious. Well, in particular, we are used to the fact that if the device of the human body, which doctors tell us about, is so and so, well, quite unambiguous, but against any medical atlas, then, in general, it will not depend and hide its secrets from who will investigate what there. But a completely different conversation begins when you approach the most innermost internal structures, respectively, of our body, where your inner attitude to life largely determines whether your structures will let you in or not. That is, if you want, a kind of protection from a fool on the path of self-knowledge. And the question always arises, well, what kind of person is worthy of this or that knowledge? Which one is not worthy? And the answer can be said right away. You will all distinguish a worthy, unworthy person if you have read, say, Russian folk tales there. That is, if a person is honest, open, if he is loyal, if he is, well, kind, then these structures tend to open up to them. If, on the contrary, he is a traitor, an infidel, if he is, well, cunning, or as it is said in some texts, there is a crafty one, or on his own mind, then he is not able to deceive these structures. Because, in fact, he begins to deceive himself, and the meaning does not open. Especially important is the fact that, in fact, any chakra is nothing more or less than an entrance to the so-called central channel. Or, one might say, the very depths of your body's structure, the level of the causal level. And penetration into these structures is a double-edged sword. Yes, this knowledge will give you great power, but you will not be able to use it without changing yourself for the better. More precisely, if you abuse this knowledge, or do not demonstrate certain moral and ethical principles, then this knowledge will first of all clean you yourself. And you will not be able to and are not ready for this, and you will feel very bad. Why do I make such a warning? Because there are many Westerners now, they will read such a text, and let's go to India to practice certain meditations. Wise banks, Brahmari, as we read here, yes, in the hope of gaining some kind of superpower. And do you know, as a rule, how it ends in the vast majority of cases? You know, such a slang word is sausage. Terrible sausage. When you suddenly realize that you don't need this superpower. You need happiness, you need peace of mind, you need love, you need loyalty, you need some kind of reliability in this world. These are really true values. In other words, you see, here one thing closes on the other a little bit, so that you can really use this power. If you are ready for it from a moral and ethical point of view. And here I want to emphasize this thing once again. Before you use these meditations, these explanations, you should remember that there are three principles of yoga. You must establish yourself in these three principles of yoga before trying, say, to awaken this or that meditation. To acquire certain abilities or superpowers, which, therefore, are promised in certain texts. Otherwise, this knowledge will close itself from you. And if it starts to manifest, then you will not be happy later. Just not happy about it all. Here. In other words, in a sense, this is a very difficult obstacle on the way. And as for the Anahata chakra, it is believed that this is one of the most, in a sense, difficult chakras on the path of self-knowledge. Where, as many teachers there said, Maya is especially strong. Where you encounter something unexpected for yourself, completely unexpected. Here. Therefore. Yes, and the next thing. In other words, you should constantly cultivate all these qualities. And so, by the way, you have to establish yourself in the three principles of yoga, and secondly, understand that you can walk this path or untie these knots of Maya either by the method of jnana or by the method of bhakti. As many yogic texts claim, or by wisdom and knowledge, or by devotion. That's when something higher opens up to you. Well, this is my little introduction, again. Because now I'm going to talk about those wine siddhas that are opening in connection with this center. So that you immediately understand what it is about, that you can use them for yourself painlessly, with impunity, only for the benefit of all living beings. Now let's take a very quick look at the basic theory. The theory is that when you were born in this world, you created the principles of the structure of your body. First, the principle of mind was created, then the principle of space, and, as he claims, the third was the principle of air. Then these principles were somehow built into universal principles, which were, in fact, created at the creation of the whole world. You know, just like a plug is plugged into an outlet, here the principle of reason has grown, stuck into the general principle of reason. They stuck the principle of their personal space into the cosmic principle, and so on. The principle of air has stuck its own personal into the general principle of air, and so to the principle of the earth. After that, you began to use these principles in one way or another in order to create your bodies and complicate them. And as if there is some kind of logic that the principles were created as if from the top down, and we use them from the bottom up. And so, let's say, the principle of air, or the principle for which the heart chakra is responsible. is the principle of tactile sensations. So, what other qualities does he have there? Count it. It should be listed there. So, come on, you better prepare, because we're wasting time. So let's start with tactile sensations then. If you're sitting, you're actually getting a lot of tactile sensations from your clothes right now. A huge amount that you don't pay attention to. There is a channel of some information that brings this flow to your higher self. The heart center is responsible for this channel of information. The heart center is equidistant, as we see, from the principle of energy, from the principle of consciousness. In other words, the lower we go, the more factors of emotions and energy begin to manifest in our body. The higher we rise from the principle of the heart, the more, as it were, the factors of consciousness that you already know. As from the position of such a mind, everything highlights. And the heart center, it turns out, it is balanced. That's why, by the way, it's given this, yantra for the Anahata chakra, like a 12-petaled lotus with two triangles. One up, the other down. That is, it is a place where the extremes are balanced. And since the extremes are balanced, then you are more. You have a greater chance of acquiring what is called wisdom. Because wisdom and knowledge, our usual knowledge, are, generally speaking, different things. Wisdom is actually superknowledge, superlogy, which does not contradict both feelings and formal logical knowledge. Usually, this important principle is applied, for example, with such recommendations. If you are facing a very difficult task that you cannot solve, then of course, how would we usually try to solve this or that problem? From the standpoint of reason, logic, common sense. That is, to take more advantage of our intelligence. But it may happen that the intellect tells us one thing, and the feeling another. And this conflict between the intellect and the senses is actually a basic conflict. Because our intelligence, which we are proud of with you now, is, of course, a good thing. If a person has a honed, logical intelligence, it is, of course, an extremely good thing. But this is logic. And sometimes, in the shell or in the container of feelings, over-logic comes to us. And so it turns out that sometimes some emotions that come to us from lower levels, despite their seeming primitiveness, contain, such as the highest messages of intuition. Although at first glance they seem to be ordinary instincts. On the other hand, there are no guarantees that these feelings or these emotions contain the highest intuition. There are no guarantees that this is not veiled stupidity. And in this regard, yoga calls for the next such approach to life. This is not to exclude feelings from your life in any case, since we can skip over logic. We can throw the baby out with the water, And at the same time, do not neglect logic. And so it turns out that the feeling is, as it were, to a greater extent, the chakras are lower than the Anahata chakra, and logic and reason are higher. And the Anahata chakra is just the place where it connects. Therefore, sometimes such a very specific meditation is given, which is known, say, in the bottoms of yoga, well, in other yogas. If you are facing an unsolvable problem, then such a serious problem. You know the question, you know how it is Hamlet, to be or not to be from to be. Then you need to focus on the heart center. So, everyone touched the heart center, straightened up. The back, neck, and head were straightened. So, Sasha, shall we get out? Yeah. That's it, well done. Here it is necessary to concentrate your attention, as a consequence, and consciousness and energy in the heart center. And, as it were, surrender to this feeling. At the same time, the following thing turns out: you do not exclude feelings, but the intellect does not rage, does not jump. And you begin to feel the situation from the position of logic, from the position of common sense, from above logic. Therefore, in many countries, in many languages, there are expressions that make a decision guided by the heart or there. Well, in general, everything related to the heart. But what is meant, friends, I emphasize once again, is not the physical organ of the heart, which drives the blood, but the core of our body. Therefore, it is said that before making any such fateful decision, and as a rule, let's say, people with power are very often forced to make difficult decisions. Peace or war, execute or pardon, save or kill. Mass. Then it is recommended to retire for a while to a place where no one will disturb you. And where there won't be, other senses won't distract you, and focus on the Anahata chakra. And in such a clear without thoughts to spend some time. Well, time, for example, in the same medieval India, as a rule, was measured indirectly by the sun, or in many texts. It is known in periods of time, say by the guardians. That is, well, it is known that there is any serious city or any settlement, it was guarded. And the guards changed with some frequency. As a rule, everything was beating for such periods of time, multiples of 2 hours or something like that. Here in many texts, it is again said that before making such a decision, retire for an hour or two in thoughtlessness, look into your heart. What will it tell you? Because very often it happens that the mind says destroy, but the feelings say no. And sometimes, on the contrary, the mind speaks, so it means keeping the feelings talking, destroying. And it's very hard to find this edge. What should I do? A balanced solution. Therefore, the Anahata chakra in this regard, well, that place, you know, is a purely practical meditation, on which will allow you. Well, if you do not get the right decision, then increase the likelihood of getting the right decision. Not to mention the others, about other additional qualities that it gives. Finally, the next point related to the Anahata chakra is the principle, respectively, of touch, which is extremely well known to Vyasa Yoga. Yasa Yoga is such a yoga of touch. As I understand it, in the future, all types of massage came from it. That is, if you are looking for a massage, as if firm where it came from, but massage, you know, is not only a rough massage, but there is also a massage that barely touches. These are all these acupuncture systems, which, let's say, are known from the Chinese and so on, they echo yoga. So, the main chakra or the main center that is involved is the heart center. And, roughly speaking, it is believed that if you are sensitive to the world around you, what is touch? This is actually the boundary where your inner world ends and the outer one begins. That is, here is still my hand, and here is already, let's say, here it has already started the floor. Or there's still air, let's say. In other words, to some extent, it is the boundary between the microcosm and the macrocosm. This is to some extent the harmony of your personal life with the life of the whole society, the whole country, or the whole universe. And a lot of problems arise for a person who, let's say, lives selfishly, or without listening to the world around him. That is, shows such selfishness. As a rule, a person does this out of fear. He is afraid that someone or something may harm him. And he, roughly speaking, puts on such armor so that he is not disturbed, not offended. There are new Russians there, so they build huge mansions for themselves, enclose them there, I don't know, with 5-meter fences, along which they let more dogs, hire guards, and don't let anyone in there. Thus, they separate themselves from the life of the whole country. They feel comfortable and protected there, because here, according to their ideas, poor grannies, homeless people, and so on, means this is the very thing. A low-class audience. They're already rich, they're scared. First of all, it's scary because there may be people who, say, steal something from them, or do some nonsense there. Secondly, they just don't want to look at some ugly pictures there, let's say, when you walk through an underground passage there and, as if a beggar is crawling on a Raskoryaczka, he will throw something there. Of course, I don't want to look at it, I want to close down. Here. And indeed, when you close, you start to feel safe on the one hand. But the payback for this is very big. Then comes loneliness. Then comes the consequences when your microcosm demands one thing, and the macrocosm also looks at you coldly, because it does not see you. He sees that fence you built. And, as a matter of fact, here is the same analogy with tactile sensations. On the one hand, if we are thick-skinned, we do not feel the world around us, we seem to have secured ourselves emotionally, morally, physically. And it seems like we should be happy, but we are cutting our inner, we are cutting the single universe at the border. And sooner or later our castle, which we built, turns into our prison. And here I will give some more moments from Nyasa Yoga. If you are interested, study it on the website less than Earl greater than. Open Yoga. So yeah, that's it. We're out of batteries. Well, as always. Just give it to me. Give it to me. So immediately it's all over. I'm asking you, here's where the red button should glow. If it doesn't glow, then this. Well, where? It is said to blurt it out carefully and immediately. Immediately everything. Technique. Technique? The technique does not stand up. Can't stand it. Everything is fine, but I just have to repeat it. Because this. It's better to get there. To whom? Before me. That you can't say such things. Well, I do not know what to do with it. That is, we will have a little defective audio. Yes, so, put it on the charger again. So, it turns out that the Anahata chakra is just that boundary. And she will either make an impregnable fortress for you, but this impregnable fortress can turn into a prison. Or vice versa, you will be open to the whole world, but the price for this will be your hypersensitivity, and you will not be able to pass by the pain of another person. You just can't just watch TV with impunity. There are criminal chronicles of the streets to look at the homeless. And, of course, as in the whole world, a certain balance is needed. Balance. That is, that on the one hand, of course, it is necessary to somehow protect yourself from unnecessary information, or from unnecessary impressions. That's fair enough. But on the other hand, if you screw up a stick, you'll build a prison for yourself, from which you won't get out. And the very first thing you will encounter will be loneliness. In addition, Yasa Yoga claims that there are other side effects, as if not taking into account the role of the Anahata chakra. I always joke about this, that there are numerous traffic jams. There is a traffic jam, during rush hour, you go somewhere there in the subway or somewhere else, not in Bitsa. Why is this happening? In general, from a theoretical point of view, it is believed that this is the universe's response to our closeness. We have all closed. We have people who ride the subway, they ride the subway. And those who, as a matter of fact, manage this subway, do not go to the subway. You see, we have roads for ordinary people, and our rulers travel, therefore, on open roads. They just never face it. They just don't understand, they don't feel. And, as a result, it comes, so this is feedback. Traffic jams on the roads. When you get into a multi-kilometer traffic jam in a car, they are partly caused not by the fact that there are, say, some serious distortions, even in the planning of the city, but by the fact that for some reason, a person does not want to go on public transport, but wants to go in his own car. And, well, as a matter of fact, he burns a huge amount of energy to carry his light carcass to the center of Moscow, let's say. From the center of Moscow, while he would modestly, quietly sit down somewhere, and there would be enough space for everyone. That is, for this kind of pseudo-discomfort attempt of ours. I know motorists, they don't even bother to walk 20 meters in the store. The car is being started, so it means that it will soon turn off. Here. And instantly. Well, you know, it's impossible to build your inner world without taking into account the outside world. And as a result, there are stampedes, traffic jams, and things that we don't like. In other words, the universe actually punishes very cruelly, harshly. More precisely, it does not punish, we punish ourselves. And so, well, and once again, of course, the most monstrous thing that can be in your life is loneliness. And, generally speaking, this is a good indicator of your yoga class. If the loneliness factor has begun to reach you as such a very serious scourge, then it means that you are on the right track. Because spiritually, you know, we all go, in general, along the same path. At first, we are herd creatures, like sheep. Where everyone goes, there I go. What everyone thinks, I think. Then comes the next evolutionary stage. We begin to understand ourselves, as it were, that we are on our own. And a lot of people unconsciously behave in a completely different way. We don't always even understand them. And a person who has embarked on a spiritual path, he is intuitively inclined to isolation. He is inclined to retire somehow, so that he does not get in the way of meditating, doing yoga, and generally just living. And indeed, it is beneficial. And this can go on for quite a long time. But then, if everything goes right, you will suddenly feel a sharp thirst and the need for like-minded people. But if you have reached this point after your cave, yes, that you really desperately need like-minded people, it means everything is going fine. You finally began to get to the heart center. In other words, you are slowly beginning to sort of wise up and understand the true structure of this world. And, strictly speaking, Why is it said in yoga that, as if a person is looking for like-minded people? This is already a fairly serious indicator of his level. When a self-sufficient person is looking for like-minded people, it indirectly speaks about his level. That's when a person who is not self-sufficient is looking for at least someone. Well, there are some people who, well, it's just that they are, well, herd creatures like that, but here they are. Well, if you say so, you sit there for 5 minutes, at least meditate. And no, I'm bored. It's better to talk to someone there on the phone, or to talk to someone. Well, it's not bad in its own way, yes, but make them be alone. They will feel very bad. And here is a different situation. A person who can feel comfortable alone for a long time, and, as a result, become self-sufficient. From the position of this self-sufficiency, he begins to look for like-minded people. Here. And, of course, there is another continuation of this topic, which is of course extremely important. It goes indirectly. Well, this is a very important thing. This is all that is connected with the continuation of life. In the cycle of our previous seminars, we have considered that the basic emotion of the Muladhara chakra is fear. The basic emotion, which means, accordingly, the Svadhisthana chakra is lust, the desire to possess, which sometimes rots fear. The basic emotion, respectively, of the Manipura chakra is anger, which in this sense surpasses both lust and fear. And each of these emotions, both fear and lust and anger, they are somehow connected, let's say, with the fact that you continue to live. Related to the fact that you somehow entered into interaction with persons of the opposite sex, looked for husbands and wives, gave birth to children. And here, look, yes, as if each of the chakras in this sense, it somehow affects, strictly speaking, your behavior in terms of communication, there, say, with a person of the opposite sex. And in this regard, the influence of the Anahata chakra is very interesting. If it is, as it were, realized by you in this respect, and you find another person with your same level, there comes a kind of heart resonance. And you are attracted to this person, you begin to love him. At the same time, the reverse side of some of these, as if the manifestations of the Nahata chakra are, let's say, jealousy. But we'll talk about this a little later now. But in any case, what is the life of a man and a woman? This is respect for someone else's microcosm. That is, if you are a man, you should understand that yes, here I have an inner world, it ends, the outer world begins. And in this outside world, there is, let's say, a girl that you love. And even though she has the same thing, and you have to learn, first of all, to feel the world around you, and secondly, another living being who also perceives this world around you. And as a result, if you develop this ability to actually feel another person, then you can easily learn to feel the whole world around you, and then be always in resonance. And then always avoid those dangers that are in the way of closing sensitivity. So the so-called pair yogas are actually based on this principle. That is, where certain exercises are done in pairs. Moreover, it is extremely preferable that this couple be of different sexes, a man, a woman, in order to increase your sensitivity to another person. And you really won't do any exercise if you don't take into account the help of another person. And if you learn to feel another person, his perception of the world, then over time, you will learn to feel the whole universe. And you will really unlock the potential for the Hatha chakras. That's why, let's say, paired yogas, here we are now at the Open University, are very much promoted for the simple reason that they protect against all inharmoniousness, from self-isolation, from everything manic. Because if a person is just starting to practice yoga, he certainly begins to distance himself from the surrounding society, so that they do not interfere with them. He retreats somewhere, practices with himself. But as a side effect, this is the emergence of manic some such tendencies. This is a feeling of an inner sense of self-pride, superiority. That is, from the position that I am such a cool yogi, or I am such a cool yajin, I work on myself there. I force myself to do asanas there about niyamas, meditations. Who can compare with me? I'm going to be over soon. This means that a little maniacal behavior arises from this. A person begins to hold himself tougher and tougher, and as a result, without feeling others, he begins to hold others as rigidly as himself inside. And this is the mistake of monsters, the most monstrous. That's why, let's say, even in some families of yogs, there is one such, yes, here is such a maniacality. Then the husband begins to press his wife. Come on, wife, do it. Then the wife, well man, let's do this yoga. Yes, that is, this kind of maniacality is a little bit like this. I'm just saying, why am I talking about this? This is a fairly typical disease in fact. Yes, quite typical. But when you, say, have a tactile heart center open, in terms of what you feel the universe, then, of course, you will not be manic. And you can approach this through paired yoga. What you have to consider as another person. You won't even rape him, cock him up, if you don't do something by this time. You can rape yourself, but it's harder to rape someone else, right? Him. He doesn't like it, yes. Here. And as a matter of fact, why is it believed that Nyasa Yoga, in this sense, accelerates all yogic processes 7 to 10 times? Paired yogas, such as paired Kriya Yoga, Hatha Yoga, paired meditations, they do not incredibly speed up the process. For the simple reason that for modern humanity, the Anahata chakra is such, you know, this is really the key chakra. After all, what? Here, pay attention to how a modern person lives. After all, the brains have developed very well. And atomic bombs were made, and chemicals poisoned the whole globe. And they have already learned to falsify food so much that they themselves no longer distinguish, right? And they made a mess of everything that can be made a mess. Well, the brains are very well developed here. But this is a bias towards consciousness, towards such intelligence. Indeed, science, progress. Let's come up with some more nastiness now, so that everything is finally over. But this goes against the feeling of all living things. Ask some worm there, yes, who was poisoned there, I'm up to the chemical. He is unlikely to answer anything. He just feels bad. And it turns out that our brains, something like that, carries them somewhere ahead, and ordinary people begin to suffer more and more. Traffic jams, all cornered, all of some kind. Take a look at any megalopolis, and you will come somewhere to the village. Their people are more holistic, more calm, more, you know, with a sense of self-worth. In general, in fact, this is the philosophy of living on Earth. It depends only on your field. Not from politicians, not from anyone, right? That is, Mother Earth feeds you. And you have a sense of pride, self-esteem. You're calm, yes. And the man, there is some modern clerk, he's all on nerves. There is one there faster on the computer, in social networks, it's faster to get a job there. And if they fire you tomorrow, and I won't have money to buy a new iPhone. It's a horror, it's the end of the world, you know. So it turns out that we are skewed in the direction of brains. And every decision must be balanced. Because what is called ordinary feelings, what is called nature, which we comprehend emotionally to a greater extent through feelings. This is a container for the supralogical, which is higher, much higher than the brains. It doesn't contradict the brain, no. Yoga encourages you to sharpen your brains. Yoga generally says that brains should be engaged in intelligence, but they should never contradict feelings, emotions. And this is exactly the center, the Anahata chakra. This is the critical place where you can bring together these two factors, both in your personal life and in terms of civilization. Moreover, even these are actually quite like this. How is it? How does that sound? Yes. In general, these predictions are so terrible, which say that if now, in the present era, the principle of energy and consciousness is not balanced, humanity will die out. We'll upset the balance, we'll come up with something, and then it will lead to God knows what, right here. Or the energy that we have in our hands, we will be able to use incorrectly. And this will lead, in general, to the fact that we will be thrown back. Much. That's evolutionarily backwards. In this regard, I constantly repeat, you know, I really like Einstein's statement when he was asked, how do you think it will be? So this is the very thing, the third, yes, in my opinion, the world, will take place. The Third World War. And the second one was already there. Fourth, he was asked when. He was asked how a nuclear war, a third world war with the use of nuclear weapons, would go. He said, I do not know how it will go, but I know for sure that the fourth will be carried out with batons. Yes, so look, friends, this is a very important center. Here in your life. And why? Is it very important? Here you are sitting here now, you live, you will have to tomorrow. Tomorrow, we will have to make some kind of decision. Brains or emotions, feelings or reason. The brains say to free everyone, to cut, to take away wages, and even better to shoot. Didn't get in the way, did they? And to feel, yes, it's a pity. No one who is right, who is to blame. Or vice versa, there is some other situation. Your feelings are being abused, yes, they are calling for some basic feelings of yours, and you succumb. Giving in to some basic feelings, yes, they can play on anything. They can play on patriotism, they can play on generic yoga there. That the feelings will say to do one thing, and the brains will say, did you fall at all? And what decision should I make? Of course, there are a million advisors around to advise you what to do. Actually, they get money for it. These mass media companies are such a zombie, yes. But they are, in fact, you will be responsible for your own actions there. And therefore, the question of a correctly chosen solution is a question of your survival in general. It is a question of your positive or negative karma. This is a matter of your spiritual development. This is generally a question of everything. It's a matter of your next life. And so once again, the heart center in this regard is an important component on the path of yoga. So damn, how long is mom still there? So, well, I found it. Let's look at yantra now. Yeah. Here. On this wonderful yantra, we have various deities, as well as animals, yes, who are responsible for this on the hut. And this, in fact, we have a deer. Deer? We are portrayed. We depict a deer in black or white, and it is responsible for our mind. Actually, if a deer is depicted in black, then this, as a rule, indicates that our mind is still in an unconscious state. That is, he succumbs to emotions, he succumbs to some of our feelings and follows them. Well, actually, like a deer. Only to hold him, and as thoughts. How to hold thoughts in the same way as to hold a deer. Here. And accordingly, if the deer is white, then it already symbolizes a conscious mind. It already symbolizes such an element as air, that is, such qualities correspond to the speed of speed. So actually, I want to connect this moment with... Well, I'm sorry, I'll interrupt, but why the speed, the speed? The fact that you can even move quickly, let's say, when you have a microcosm and a macrocosm in harmony. That is, you will not climb the wall, or you will slip through where it is necessary, yes, but where it is necessary. You will not get stuck. That is, there is a very clear feeling, yes, that's what's going on around. That is, you correlate your microcosm with the macrocosm, and then you can sniff, 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 sniff. And if you do not correlate, you will either get stuck there somewhere, or you will be carried to the wrong place. Yeah, I'm sorry further. Yes, actually, the Anahata chakra is responsible for balance in our country, and, in fact, such a goddess Kakini, who is depicted here with 4 heads, 4 arms, corresponding attributes. She says that the one who has reached and opened the Anahata chakra is in balance, and, accordingly, can move in all directions. Without encountering obstacles. And also, as for the deer, it is said that the deer is ready. Somehow, what can I say? Him. I'm going to find it in the text now. Yes. Well, while you're looking, let me explain it to you again. Friends, this, of course, does not mean that you have Ole sitting inside there. You have to understand, because I sometimes meet with such idiotic interpretations, so this symbolism means. So, this is a typical example, how can I tell you, of this twilight or borderline language, in which all ancient knowledge is described. In general, in fact, Anahata, Shiva Samhita, let's say there is Hatha Yuga, Prodipika, these are already completely chewed texts. And generally speaking, all these explanations are spiritual, they were written in such, allegorical language. Which would make you think. Somewhere, certain images were given in the form of gods or gods, somewhere in the form of certain animals, somewhere in the form of certain abstractions, like let's say 2 triangles intersecting. Or let's say there are 12 petals of the chakra. And how should we treat this? This should be treated as follows. What is it? A veiled push for your knowledge, but not a direct description of what's inside. Back in the days, then, of this John George Wolfe, who is known as Arthur Vallon, there were conducted. And it was the end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century. Very hot ones were conducted that here you are claiming about chakras with some petals, with some letters and deer. But our doctors, no matter how many of these bodies they cut, did not find any chakras. There was definitely no deer, yes. Here, and you understand, yes, that this is it. This is the degree of protection of this spiritual knowledge. Once again, even the Shat chakra is not Rupana, it is generally chewed up. And if you take, say, some texts or mantras from veins, or from some other sources, there, if you are not initiated, if you do not cook in this tradition, if you have not lived and cooked in this general cultural layer yourself, you do not understand at all what they want to tell you. You just don't have the keys to this translation, this key, analogies. That is why it is very difficult for a Westerner, generally speaking, to study and understand what is meant. And a huge number of texts, unfortunately, came without keys. Moreover, it seems that the Indians themselves have already lost these keys. That's what's most offensive. Because you always flatter yourself with the idea that there are some closed yoga schools somewhere, where, well, this knowledge is still stored. And they really probably are. But here is their volume. And, you know, the next question is, maybe they are quietly bending over there. Because again, the same texts of John George Woodruff tell us that he had access to some knowledge. But later researchers do not have. After all, you also don't think when in the 50s and 60s people in the West began to be interested in all these chakras, yogs. From America alone, whole crowds of these pilgrims rushed to India. This is what we have in the Soviet Union, just like with the collapse of the USSR. He is now walking around India, wandering around Rishikesh there. Everyone there buys dedication on the cheap. And well, Rishikesh has already been there for these last 50 years, since the 60s and 50s, it has already been rebuilt. You can imagine what a hole it was in the 40s and 50s, when it only became, well, popular in the West. And thousands of Westerners rushed to India. The Hindus were very surprised what they were looking for there. Until now, by the way, some were surprised. But now it has somehow become popular because it brings money. This is quite a serious income item. So, you know, there is demand, there is supply. You can buy anything there now. And imagine there a little earlier. And what did the Western ones face all of these? Both professors and adepts. With the fact that they just don't understand. They were not introduced into a narrow circle. What they were given, well, it was debatable to study. And that's why I'm talking about it. There must be some kind of, you know, this kind of internal push. You have to feel this knowledge. Don't think that you can just buy it there, or read it like that, and immediately understand it. You can read the true text, but its meaning is multi-level. And you will really understand when you start practicing yourself, cooking in one or another environment. So, come on. So, actually, we continue about the deer. And now they say that the deer is ready to die for the sake of pure sound. And a person with a predominant fourth chakra, well, meaning conscious, has a love for inner sounds. And, in fact, what is it about here? Anahata chakra. It is a symbol of balanced masculine and feminine principles, respectively, of our energy and our consciousness. And if it is worked out, then an inner balance is achieved in it, which allows yoga, practice, to hear the very first primordial sound, which we consider in such sources as snake power, a garland of letters, a person begins. Something to say. Perceive. To become a guide of the Supreme. Yes. And perceive. The sound of Anahata. Yeah. So. Well, there's also about symbolism. There's a piece in the book there about symbolism. Do you have this Johari? Yes. Hari Johari. Here's a piece. So, look, friends, well, the most of these other texts that. You have snake power, don't you? Why snake power now? And then Harisha Johari. Of course, in the Western language, for the first time in a more or less popular form, knowledge, including the Anahata chakra, came thanks to the works of John George Wynne, known as Arthur Vallon, in such texts as, say, Snake Power. And already in our time, well, at least in the Russian-speaking environment, it was very popular. Harish Johari's book was used. So, he had several books, including one dedicated to the chakras. Yeah. And let's start with the snake power. And so, in fact, I lost it. Yes, what is it? This Shabda is considered to be located in the Anahata chakra. Anahata is the great center in the heart of all living beings. There is Ankara, associated with the three gunas. And Mahasva Chandratanka says, the Great One declares that your blissful form of the lady is manifested in Anahata, and, being shown by experience, is turned inside the Blessed One, whose hair stands on end, and eyes cry with joy. This is a lotto with 12 petals in bright red letters. Bur, 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 and so on. All 12 letters are listed. Here is the center of the tattva of the air. According to the Shat chakra of Nirupan, the region of air is a hexagon formed of 2 triangles, one of which is inverted. Its color is like smoke because it is surrounded by masses of steam. His bija sits on a white antelope, which denotes fluidity, and is a carrier of air with its ability to move. Here is Isha, the supreme lord of the first 3 chakras, and mind some in a garland of human bones, whose heart is softened by drinking nectar, and a mine in the shape of an inverted triangle, in which there is a golden banalingal. And Hamsa is like a jivatma, like a motionless candle flame in a windless place. Jivatma is described in this way because, like a flame that is not shaken by the wind, the Atma in itself is not disturbed by the movement of the world, it is also motionless. Yeah. So, come on, friends, now once again all these descriptions from different sources were given by John Goodrew. They are allegorical, as you understand, and in one place there is a deer, in another an antelope. In other words, these are some qualities that you can see from ordinary life, and correlate with the action of one or another spell. Now let me say a few more words about these exercises that involve the Anahata chakra and accelerate yoga progress extremely. Extremely, friends. That's how I said, like Yasa Yoga, like steam yoga. And the theory of why this happens. Well, indeed, at the base of our body, there is our Kundalini energy. It is believed that this is a feminine principle. At the top of the head is our consciousness. It is believed that this is a male principle. Therefore, yes, and the place where they are equally removed is our Anahata chakra, where they mutually, harmoniously interact. It turns out from this fact that a whole set of exercises, a variety of exercises, turns out that if you do certain exercises in a man-woman pair, then as if the woman personifies the energy at the base of the body, and the man represents consciousness. If they do certain exercises, they automatically increase the speed of all yoga processes by 7 to 10 times. I've already talked about this. That's why we are now actively promoting, well, in any case, for the training of future yoga teachers, pair yoga. Because a person who knows how to do paired kriya, or paired hut, or paired meditation, automatically begins to develop a heart center. And he begins, let's say, to feel another person very strongly at first. Then, he begins to feel very strongly all living beings from the surrounding world in general, and then the whole universe in general. Well, let's say, in an open yoga university, this is a vital quality, since a future yoga teacher, when he comes to the gym, he must teach yoga. Moreover, he should conduct yoga not for himself, but for others. And in order to conduct yoga for others, he must feel other people. And, as a matter of fact, it is precisely the practice associated with the heart center, the practice of the steam room, that helps to sharply develop sensitivity towards the hall, to other people. Here with a pronounced. Once again, sometimes he asks, why are there a man and a woman? Yes, that is, in pairs. Of course, in principle, it is allowed, let's say, a woman, well, they're in some exercises. But the greatest effect is obtained from a man to a woman. Because an external partner is not a partner. Externally, it is the universe in the factor of energy or consciousness. And they are on the principle of like, the same situation happens inside you. And if you, men and women, have reached some point of harmony, understanding, balance in pair practice, if, let's say, pair Kriya Yoga begins to capture you like a dance, then you involuntarily approach the feeling of the Anahata chakra and the feeling of inner harmony within yourself. And you begin to discover all the relevant superpowers associated with this, which we have already read in these texts, as well as many others. Here. That's why I'm very. Yes, and that's why, let's say, a man's body is the best simulator for a woman. A woman's body is the best simulator for a man. That's why I promote this, well, yoga very much. In particular, it is an ideal yoga, pair yoga for couples. She truly does wonders sometimes. Because we are also facing this. Let's say the husband does any yoga, but the wife does not. Or vice versa, the wife is engaged, but the husband is not. And how to involve another person, and, as a consequence, as a side effect, including to harmonize relations in the family. This is a very important factor so that the husband feels the wife, and the wife feels the husband. So that the husband goes beyond his microcosm, his body, and, as it were, looks at the world through the eyes of his wife. And the wife, accordingly, through the eyes of her husband. And for this reason, all of these practices based on the use of the Anahata chakra, they, first of all, harmonize your personal life extremely strongly. Secondly, they harmonize your life in the light of the harmony of the microcosm and the macrocosm, and thirdly, they also give as a side effect a lot of such abilities turning into superpowers. And what kind of superpower is this? But, as I said, it's to feel the surrounding universe. And, accordingly, it turns out that you stop feeling obstacles. Well, let's call it in our own words. A person who has this ability never gets into traffic jams. Think about it, right? That is, so that for you this yoga is not abstract. So that, you know, here we refer a lot to ancient India, there, to some such moments, yes, but you understand, yes, after all. What difference does ancient life or modern life make? That is, this person does not encounter obstacles on the way. After all, how many times does it happen that you're going to do something? Damn, but what is it? Then one, then another, then the third. Everything gets in the way. Here, he does not encounter obstacles in the implementation of certain of his plans. As the rector of the International Open University, I would like to have grids, of course. Because if I introduce any innovation in an open yoga university, it meets with such resistance. I really don't know what. Why? Because I'm doing it wrong. I haven't developed my heart center. That is, I need to get smarter. And imagine how many such problems there are at work. You are the boss, you have a subordinate. There will definitely be hidden sabotage, misunderstanding, and so on. And it will be until you feel everyone involved in the process. And it's only with the opening of the chakra, it's only with these techniques, like Yasa Yoga, Pair Yoga, this feeling will come to you. Well, indirectly. Well, plus those other techniques that we will also talk about at today's seminar. These are the corresponding meditations about niyamas, mantras, and so on and so forth. Therefore, well, or you know, here's my favorite example. Alexander Vasilyevich Suvorov was such a very good generalissimo. Here, after all, he hasn't lost a single battle, friends. Actually, it would be interesting. He was in times. Napoleon was just rising, and he was already, as it were, leaving. And he has such an interesting book, but he would win. It's very aphoristic, you know, like really yogic texts. And what did he write about there? What is most important is the I, the sense of time. Here's a sense of the relationship of the different parts. If I lost this feeling, I lost. You feel it even with small forces you win. He really did wonders there. In fact, he showed a generalship strategy. And the most interesting thing is that no one could copy it. It would seem, well, since Suvorev was there, he even left a book behind. What did we get away from Napoleon there? I don't know, we burned Moscow. Well, I mean the war of the 12th year. And the fact is that it's not. This is not a fact, you know, of some kind of mental knowledge. This is the fact of this feeling of the world. And again, what do we see? Only that means this very favorite, like Illarionovich Kutuzov, Mikhail Larionovich Kutuzov. Yes, he sensed the situation. He felt it. He lured this poor Napoleon without a fight, then, where it is not necessary. And then the poor guy, it means, ran away. In other words, this feeling is a very important factor. Let's say if you are a military commander, you can achieve big results with little blood. And in particular, well, the heart center, when it opens, then a feeling of love and compassion comes to you. Listen to the word compassion. In other words, it is you who feel the other person with your skin. If he feels bad, then you feel bad. How can this be? This is only when this factor of the heart center is working. By the way, about the same Suvorev Alexander Vasilievich, he wrote in his biography that I am a very kind person. I won't hurt a fly, but I shed so much blood that it's terrible. Yes, that's how the factor of a person who is completely like, well, how can I tell you, harmless, yes, but on the other hand, the greatest military commander. But because he felt, so he made a decision just with this center. Where they said it was impossible, reason said it was impossible, he was in no hurry to agree with it. Or vice versa. And so study the biographies of the great ones. In general, there is such a very good thing. You want to be great by reading the great ones. Study the biographies of great people who have achieved at least something. And you will begin to notice for yourself that as far as their actions fall into the structure of yoga theory. Actually, you can explain a lot of things. So, friends, let's take a little break. This is the third part of the Anahata Chakra workshop. My name is Vadim Zaporozhtsov. Today is the 20th of October, 2013 year. So, before we go any further, if anyone has any questions, and someone sit down at the computer, maybe the part-time students have some questions there. I am ready to answer them. Go ahead. Okay, if there are no questions, share your feelings from the practices. Does anyone have anything to say? Yes.
When you said to introduce the enemies, I didn't introduce anyone.
Great, wonderful. They've already evaporated.
I think I just wanted to hug everyone. And there was absolutely no aggression.
And that's the point, friends. This urge to hug, and the urge to treat enemies as a misunderstanding, it's the same, friends. Still enemies. In fact, our bad karma. What is our bad karma? In fact, our own stupidity. What is our stupidity? In fact, a misunderstanding. And I want to know what kind of. Do you know where it is? What is it? You understand, right? Here. It's like, you know, walking with a torch and looking for darkness. So, where is the darkness there? Not anywhere, right? So, who else has what? Yes, please.
At the first practice, when
Here, then our part-time students will not hear these. They will scold me, and rightly so.
Angelina Bezmenova, morning group. The very first practice, when we can start the heart chakra like this. And the partner's heart responded in my mind as if I was listening to my heart. That is, there was no difference at all. And then, when we switched places, he listened, he heard my heart when I was catching a feeling. I've missed that beat already. I just have it like this, as if there was some kind of response. Here, that is, the continuation of its own, somehow here is the rhythm. Well, something like a sense of unity.
Yes, that is, the microcosm. The macrocosm begins to unite into one. You begin to feel the breathing and the rhythm of the universe, the beating. the heartbeat of the cosmos. And it is clear that you do not know, you know. Do you understand? Well, as a whole. Thank you. Who else has what? Please come here.
Maria Mamontova, her International Hidden University, Vega Group, and there was, well, the first one was just one of the first exercises when I put my hands on each other. Here I had some kind of stupid, strange feeling that it was like my hands, well, not mine, but I was looking at them from the outside. Here, then, when I also put my partner's hand just on my chest, this was the feeling. At the beginning, I felt the heartbeat, and then it's like the muscles are walking. And here is a feeling, as if you feel the internal organs to some extent. Here, well, when there was a moment when you suddenly stand, in my opinion, with each other's backs.
Yeah.
And there are enemies around. It's so simple. Well, it was just a representation that, as it were, the light from the chest of the partner and you, that's how the enemies are like this. Well,
There isn't. So meditation, may all living beings be happy, yes, and cordial. So, is there anything else anyone can tell us? Feels like it, please. And no one has a feeling of pressure left after practice. That's what's stirring there. Just here I am. Still, wait, you will come home, you will go to bed, I assure you. More. Then there will be more in the reviews. That's what I'm talking about, that when I felt like I was being burned on both sides. From palm to palm, there seems to be such a burning ray. And there was a very powerful visualization and hexagrams of the hexagonal shape all the way. Well, that's it, okay with that. I decided to keep the rest to myself. Secret practice. The principle of secrecy. Okay, who else has what? Please.
Anna Shestapalova, International Open University Group. That's how Angelina said, when we put our hand on the partner's chest at the beginning, the feeling of a heartbeat, and the feeling that I feel his center as if through myself. So strange, I mean, yes. And then, in the process of practice, it feels as if the sphere in the chest is expanding, light, warmth. And when they did something with their hands were cold, frozen, and at some point it felt like it was burning their hands. It burns my hands. I opened my eyes at some point when yantra was right in front of my eyes. And so the yantra was directly imprinted in the eyes, and the pressure seemed to go.
Great. Someone else will say, please. Come on, speak out, speak out.
Yulia Romanenko of Vega Group. During the first exercise, there was a feeling that somehow their hands, yes, were applied to another person, that his hands or even some kind of warmth was on my side. And during the practice, there was this feeling of vibration, small, 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 and this inner vibration, it was transmitted to the external body. That is, the body vibrated a little bit, and the Yan mantra, that's what we were saying inside, she was inside in a very, very loud voice. And from this loud voice, the heart region was revealed. And after practice, it seemed that there was such a big, big hole from which streams of light were coming.
Yeah. Great. So, again, please, let's speak out.
Marina Elyasova, I am a free listener, and I want to say that during the exercises, when we put our hand on the partner, one of the first, on the heart area, at one point, I began to feel very clearly how the beating was going, and at that moment I seemed to shift my perception, and looked at both of us from parties, and there was a feeling of unconditional love and wonder at the miracle of creation in general.
Yes. You remember, it was said there, the ability to leave the body. Remember, right. Here's a piece. No, in all seriousness, friends, yes, great, yeah. Oh yeah, so, someone else. Let's go ahead and speak out, friends. The feeling that you are suddenly looking at everything from the outside. You touch, they touch you, and you kind of look at it from the outside with God, you know. Yes, it is unclear who is concerned. And in general, you see, this is the concept. Where am I, and where am I not? Usually we have a very clear idea. Here I am, and here I am no longer me. And then hop, and everything starts to merge. Please.
It is Xenia, the Vega group. At the beginning, I concentrated on this chakra, and at the end of the practice my mind was going well into someone's who.
Partner.
Yes. That is, I was no longer concentrating on my chakra. I had, well, not what I wanted.
Yes. Yeah.
Something was taking me there.
Attracted.
Yes, attracted.
So, great. Has everyone spoken out? Please. And part-time students, prepare some questions there. Now we will answer the questions and go further. Yeah, please. Ivan, shoulders on Vega. Well, at the beginning of practice, again, there was such calmness. Well, again, I tried to concentrate here, on the hut. And so. Then it shifted more. Or rather, even so. I almost immediately moved, well, as it were, to managing a partner. Here. As if the energy had lost exactly on the hand. There, in the heart of another person, in the heart of a girl. Well, this constant movement of energy between the two centers was felt even with my eyes closed. And I just kind of could see with my eyes closed. Here I do not know how to describe it in general. Yes. This is a very strange, in fact, ability, superpower. Yes, there's a lot out there, friends, in fact, what else awaits us in yoga? That's a lot. Yeah, that's the feeling. Yeah, great yet. Who's what? Has everyone spoken out?
According to the body so instantly jumped and relaxed.
Yes. There's more.
It went everywhere.
A lot. In general, there are many very good things in the South. But look, friends, all these very powerful practices, like Yasa Yoga, Pair Yoga. There is only one significant drawback of these yogas. A very big partner is needed. Do you understand? Here are the poor part-time students sitting, watching and licking their lips. This is it. Once again, I repeat this idea, yes, evolutionary, that first you are alone, first you are in the stage, then you become one. And then you start looking for like-minded people. Here is an open yoga university, in fact, was conceived just as a place where once you have been alone enough. You already need like-minded people from a position of self-sufficiency, right? So that's wonderful. Now we will give questions, if any, to part-time and full-time students, and we will go further. We still have a lot to consider today. Please, are there any questions?
Well, I have such a question. Here again. Forgiveness when you see. It seems like your body is not yours, and it's kind of creepy enough.
Here.
How?
That is? Yes, that is. I say, this is a good question. In fact, what is called a sausage is when we start doing practices and do not fully believe that there can be anything there. And then, when it starts to happen, we somehow feel uneasy. Is this really so? But I must say that then you get used to it quickly enough and already treat it in a working order. And finally, you remember, yes, these are all practices, of course. There is another such aspect, well, in particular, of those practices that you have done. I talk about it all the time. The keys to your superpowers are with the people around you. The keys to your superpowers are in the hands of your partner. And, let's say, you can turn on your superpowers, which you don't even know about, either yourself. But after spending a decade of practice there, or you can do it like this, with a click of your finger. Due to the fact that your like-minded people will simply turn them on. This is how the universe is made, friends. Here. And of course, you have to use it, well, in a good sense of the word, but you have to use it gradually, get used to it gradually. Gradually. In other words, it should all be very harmonious. That's it. So, come on, who has questions about theory in general, or about the practice that we did, from part-time students, maybe. Or from you. There isn't. Nothing is clear. Well, in general, it's useless to ask questions after practice, because I'm not up to questions in myself. I usually, such a reception. By the way, if you don't want to answer questions, tell me. There will be questions after practice, right? And that's it. Then no one will open their mouth. So, wonderful. Let's move on. Look at the thing here. So, the heart center. The center of such, unconditional love. Oh, I just love it. And this is his very strong point. And what's the downside? Jealousy. Jealousy. In fact, jealousy is truly a ferocious thing. I know that some schools of the Yuga, where, therefore, fast methods are practiced. A person could come there and be taught. If he was stupid, angry, selfish. Well, that's, stupid, right? That's what. But if he didn't have jealousy. Sometimes they are, however, by chance. I do not know how it is, a violation of the law of nature. Is that why? Because just as the power of the medicine of the heart center is enormous, the reverse side is also terrible, jealousy. That is, and the accompanying, such emotions associated with betrayal. Well, imagine there, the one you trusted betrayed you. In particular, of course, it is monstrous when there is, say, some close person there. You counted on him everything. And he betrayed you. And do you know how they say such an expression? Like a knife to the heart, right? A knife to the heart, tweet. Or how? The knife is driven into my heart to the hilt and turns, right. But if you, God forbid, I don't want to wish it on you. Let you not have it. So, you will face jealousy or betrayal of loved ones. This is perhaps the strongest negative blow you can kill. In other words, a person simply dies himself. Because this is where his being is all, and here it is in the most sacred. Here's another one. There is such a good saying, he spat in the soul. You understand, right? In fact, analyze the sayings, turns of speech. It's not necessarily our Russians there, well, there are English others there, and so on. And in fact, as a matter of fact, you will find responses to this knowledge everywhere. Because yoga is not something artificial. This understanding is as everyone has. So, of course, this is an extremely strong blow. This is betrayal for a person, but as if from a person's side. This is the expectation of betrayal and jealousy. Let's figure it out with you. What is jealousy? Jealousy is when you think that, let's say, what should belong to you begins to belong to someone else for some unknown reason. That is, my wife should be with me, she is with someone else. But jealousy is not necessarily like that between a man and a woman. There is a very different kind of jealousy. There is, let's say, jealousy at work. I have to hold this position, and here someone is trying to claim what belongs to me. It's like this, here's a very interesting feeling, that on the one hand I am, as we have already said, I exist most strongly manifests itself through the heart center. And therefore many practitioners on research what is our self call for it to concentrate, first of all on the heart center, since it is balanced and better understand what is our higher self. It is the consciousness of energy, it is knowledge and feelings. Here. And at the same time then, look what kind of thing happens. Our higher self, It certainly does not consider itself to be what it really is, but it considers itself to be its manifestations, or its manifestation, which is called prana.
Оно считает себя своими проявлениями или своим проявлением, которое называется прана.
Prana is, in fact, consciousness and energy in such an undivided
В
form.
таком неразделенном виде.
And it is in the heart center that it is most easy to realize what prana, consciousness, energy is in an undivided form.
В виде наиболее легко.
Therefore, in fact, when you say there, I have a soul here or there, some imply that you have your higher self right there. No, your higher self is beyond space and time. But here the manifestation of your higher self, or prana, manifests itself very strongly.
Я или прана.
And that's why, and since the higher self identifies itself with prana, that's why it seems that my soul is right here. The soul hurts, yes there, or something else. Right here. So, it turns out that we begin to identify ourselves with prana in the heart center to a greater extent than with everything else.
Степени, чем со всем остальным.
And in its pure form, when prana manifests, it is perceived by us as all-encompassing love, joy, happiness, serenity.
Всеобъемлющая любовь, радость, счастье, безмятежность.
Here.
Вот
That's it, yes, that's it. But at the same time, if we have someone or something, let's say our husband, or our wife, or our job, or something else, yes, that we are jealous of, then we stretch out an associative connection. So, firm our heart center to this object or phenomenon.
этому объекту или явлению.
And in fact, depending on how this object or phenomenon behaves, we begin to feel either very good or very bad.
Чувствовать либо очень хорошо, либо очень плохо.
If you have a good relationship with your wife, then you love her, and she gives you happiness, joy, enjoyment of every second of life together.
Счастье, радость и наслаждение каждой секундой совместной жизни.
Strictly speaking, why did the Absolute invent a family life? Not for you to swear and argue there, I don't know, there were scandals in the kitchen. No, he's absolutely not a pervert, no. He has made family life so that you are in the best. It was the joy of being that they felt better, they came to a sense of their nature faster.
Естества своего.
But if, say, your husband or wife starts betraying you there one way or another, it turns out to be a very scary thing.
То получается очень страшная вещь.
The strongest prana, as it were, is divided in half. On the one hand, you attach it to the person you love, and intuitively think that there is no difference between you and him. That whatever you think and feel, you should think and feel it.
Должен думать и чувствовать он.
And he, the scoundrel, begins to behave differently. Or her. And here is this dissonance that you consider yourself, well, as you know. Here's another one, you know, here's a good expression, that this is my wife there.
Там, моя жена, там,
The former broke my heart.
сердце разбила.
Remember, yes, there is such a phrase, that you thought you had one heart for two.
Сердце.
And she, the bastard, split it into two halves and pulled her half, right. And the connection has remained, as if the heart is already tearing out of you. And it's extremely painful, friends.
Больно.
This is pain in its purest form. It's a pain. You know, here. The pain of jealousy, it is sometimes even stronger than physical pain. Because it's a physical pain. How would it be possible to mentally block it? There, reflect on something else, try to forget. And then any reflection will again lead you to your own prana, to your second half, and to how it means it has gone somewhere, right?
Куда-то делась.
That is, to this one. To this discord. And it is clear that if you have experienced this feeling at least once in your many lives before that you were betrayed.
Испытывали это чувство, что вас предавали.
And you could probably be betrayed only in one case, if you betrayed yourself. In other words, betrayal later is in fact, well, in karmic terms, a reflection of those laws that you once generated. That time, Having experienced betrayal, friends, this is such a strong imprint. This is such a strong imprint, yes, that he has been through many, many lives. Therefore, jealousy, friends, is one of the most difficult feelings to work with. Extremely difficult, friends. And to overcome jealousy, friends, is in fact to make such a grand leap further in spiritual terms, which literally then makes all desires feasible. And, strictly speaking, for this reason, it is believed that here in the heart center there is this grantha, that is, such a kind of difficult to overcome knot. Here we read what Harish Johari wrote there about the difficulties associated with the heart center. Well, as a matter of fact, the deeper interpretation is different. It consists in the fact that if you are able to overcome the reverse side of the manifestation of the heart center, only then will you unravel this most complex knot of Maya. That is, well, here again, friends. If you encounter jealousy for real, it will probably be an emotion that will overshadow all others. Fear, anger, rage, everything will be subordinated to jealousy. When can you encounter? Yes, and jealousy is very hard to overcome inside yourself. It sometimes takes years. One single one told me that her husband left her. He's a good guy, isn't he? Here. As they say, he left without declaring war. For 3 years, she could not eat, not sleep, but like a zombie. Went to work, left, came. That's it. Life was for her. Well, she just disappeared life. Here. And only then many, many more. Well, how is it? She really has good karma. She got into one of the yoga schools, a fairly powerful yoga school. And she tells me that she only let her go there for the 3rd year. After that, well, she started to look at everything as if from the outside. And according to her assurances, there is nothing worse than jealousy. Nothing at all. Therefore, friends, there is such a rule, the rule of loyalty and devotion. With all the strength you have, never betray anyone. Remember how this Saint-Exupéry is, right? You are responsible for those who have been tamed. Sometimes it is better to remain faithful and die because of this loyalty than to betray in this life and in the next life. To face the reverse side of betrayal, to get jealousy, and from this it means to suffer. Therefore, there are, once again, 2 methods in yoga, how you can walk the path of yoga. I have already mentioned them today. This is the method of yoga wife understanding wisdom, and the method of bhakti yoga, the method of devotion. Sometimes bhakti yoga. By bhakti yoga is meant the feeling of love, that is, the method of love. This is not quite correct, friends. Because you can be devoted to someone, love him at some point, dislike some, hate some, but still be devoted. Do you understand? And it's considered aerobatics to be loyal. Not to love someone, but to be devoted. If you are lucky enough, say, in India somewhere else, to encounter a real powerful yoga school, a real one like this.
настоящий такой вот.
Not the new model that was built there now in India, but still of those times.
Тех времен.
And remember that if there is even the slightest suspicion of your infidelity, if there is even the slightest suspicion that you are a traitor, then you will not be allowed to take a cannon shot at any serious yoga.
Вашей неверности, если будет хоть малейшее подозрение в том, что вы предатель, то вас на пушечный выстрел ни к одной серьезной йоге не подпустят.
They won't even communicate for any money. Therefore, friends, once again, to work with the Anahata chakra here, to sort of reveal it, as we said, right, in order to manifest it, so that it manifests itself as a natural joy of being and love for all living things. There should not be a hard imprint of jealousy before this, because your jealousy, as if it pulls everything together, closes.
Потому что ваша ревность, как бы она всё стягивает,
And on the hut, the chakra wants to open up, but jealousy pulls it down. How can you be jealous? Jealousy is if you betrayed someone in a previous life. People who have never betrayed anyone never have jealousy. They just don't understand that this can be. Do you understand? Therefore, there is also a very powerful way of working the Sanahata chakra.
работы с анахата чакрой.
Analyze it.
Проанализировать
Analyze your attitude to those or to what you love, on the subject of to what extent you have jealousy.
на предмет того, в какой степени у тебя есть ревность.
The more jealousy you discover inside yourself, it will say that to a greater extent, you were worried that you were once betrayed.
Переживали, что вас когда-то предавали.
The more you've been betrayed, the more likely you've betrayed someone before, too.
Раньше тоже кого-то предавали.
Therefore, if you want your heart center to automatically manifest without effort,
Личный центр без усилий проявлялся.
make it a rule never to deceive anyone, well, not to betray.
Предавать.
Do not betray. It's not like someone is counting on you and you know it, right? And then hop. You said, how is that? How did they drink it? This. Love is gone. How is that? Tired of the sun. Yes, that is, at that moment you confessed that there is no love. Yes, that is, she waved her pen, and that. Yes, or vice versa, on the part of the man there, I do not remember, there is also an analog. The same situation applies to any activity. That is, if there is no jealousy, the Anahata chakra will begin to manifest itself. And as a result, all the advantages that you can extract from it.
Вы можете извлечь из нее.
First of all, a person with an open heart, he is joyful and happy. It's always nice to be with him. He is open, without a second thought, cheerful and pleasant to communicate with him. Wise, with a sense of humor.
С чувством юмора
He shines like the sun, people are drawn to him.
тянутся.
And I especially like these texts, pay attention, it's all about women. Give us a piece, will you? What kind of food that means there is purum purum will become irresistible for women? That is, the heavenly virgins.
Небесные девы, да, там, значит, эти самые больше...
You know, it was touching in these Indian texts that all people were divided into Brahmins, women foreigners.
Брахманов, женщин и иностранцев.
Found it. Anyone. Find there a chakra not Rupana, or any there are a few words at the end. Here. So. Look here. Therefore. Listen, what are you doing there? Only 3 lines in the yoke texts have reached us there.
Йоковских текстов!
And you can't find that in these lines. This is not war and peace. Now. Hides it from us. You don't say. In the end, we will give sources for self-development. Primary sources. No, it doesn't seem to be here. Well, anyway, we need to eat suckers. You know, I really like Shiva Sami. Let me read this again from the Shiva Samhita. And the Nahata lotus is located in the region of the heart. Its color is deeply blood red. The seed, that is, the Bija mantra, in 12 petals, like Hagahahatatha. In this lotus, there is a flame called Banalingam. Meditation on it? Meditation on it acquires objects of the visible and invisible world. The Lord of the Lotus is Pinaki, the goddess of what? Those who always meditate on this lotus in their hearts are desired by the heavenly virgins. Friends, you are about to reflect, you will be desired by heaven. Guys, do you hear? Yes, heavenly maidens. And look, the symmetries. Yes, he will receive invisible knowledge, but immeasurable knowledge. He knows the past, the present, the future, has the ability of clairvoyance, clairaudience, and can travel through the air. And then it's also interesting. He sees initiates and goddesses known as yajini. Very often our friends are Hindus. They are very surprised when they are told that. You know, but you have not only yugas at all, but we're one. Don't you remember? Yes. Here is a gradation on people, foreigners and women. Yes. Here. So, look here too, in continuation of this topic. Therefore, it is clear that these texts were primarily aimed at men. I talk about it all the time. That's how historically it has happened that most, 90 I don't know how many % of everything, has reached for men. In our yoga school, it is generally stated that female teachers should be born or wake up in our era. That it was very difficult for them to be born there in other places and at other times. But now you can make it so that. So girls, wake up. Here. So look here. Well, in the future, yes. If you are looking for a wife, imagine you are eating a man, looking for a wife. Who should I take as my wife? A reasonable question, yes. Well, first of all, what is marriage for anyway, as they say? First of all, the return of a sacred duty is the birth of children. It is clear that your wife should give birth to children, love them, raise them there and take care of them. But it kind of goes without saying. Actually, both men and women are for this. And then, well, any kind of children can tremble, smart, beautiful there. And so on. They list all the wonderful qualities there. And which one to choose? What wife? Which woman to choose? Someone says, I want a smart one. Someone says, no, beautiful. Someone both smart and beautiful. And so on. Again, there are a lot of all sorts of combinations. Now imagine the moment. You chose a smart and beautiful, and in every way wonderful woman, and she waved her hand at you. You understand, right? And it's very strange, but you can read this in the Dharma Shastra, there in others, which is clear, a faithful woman is needed. Why? Because it is believed that no matter how she looks, a woman adapts to what a man wants to see. If she was ugly, she will become beautiful. That is, in fact, she was never ugly. She's beautiful for someone else. But if she happens to be with you, sooner or later she will look like you. You know, there's a saying that long couples start over time. Again, she was a stupid fool nothing. If she gets into an academic environment, a woman, she is very good in this regard. And the question is that the wife must be faithful. 3 jewels. How many jewels are there? A horse, an elephant, there's something else, and a faithful wife. Read the legends of ancient India. Not a beautiful wife, pay attention, but a faithful wife, yes. And the question is, but how to determine it? Is it true or false? Well, no, the faithful wife is not written on the forehead. Yes, yes. Here. That is, they are needed. This is where Sith, superpowers, friends are needed. Superpowers can be recognized at a glance. And that's what we just read, that the one who works with the heart center meditates accordingly on the Anahata chakra. He just sees the initiates and goddesses known as the one. Here she is and the wife, as they say. Okay, all right. It's humorous, but not funny when it's really love. Love is poisoned by jealousy. It's like, you know, a fly in the ointment. And the question, but just imagine, was covered by a wave of jealousy. A wave of jealousy swept over him. We didn't even imagine it. I have met people, I have students, they are also like this, you know, the type, imagine, self-sufficient, ascetic. On one leg in the Himalayas, stood there for some time. Well, that is, he kept himself in check. Here, and then, that's it, bang bang, and wife, and he can't help himself. And now you already know, at least in the first approximation, the general theory of yoga. You, as the future, so to speak, these very luminaries of yoga. What advice would you give to a person who has jealousy?
Trust.
But how can I trust? I trusted you that time too, so where? Left without pants at all. Yes, that is. It will turn out. Well, look, there's actually two. Firstly, what to do is one thing, and secondly, how to do it. How to survive it. You understand, right? That is, to let go. Well, yes, now I'm going to die, and he's free. To understand that person, to understand his reasons.
Maybe analyze your past experience if you remember, and how to work out what you once did.
Yes, it's already very, very good, it's getting closer. Look what a thing. In fact, if you were faced with some kind of situation, then you had some kind of blind spot of the brain. On the obvious signs that this is possible, you did not recognize them. That is, it is clear, first of all, it is necessary to analyze yourself. That is, not only did you create the situation yourself, that you faced jealousy, another conversation. What is it with you that this system error has occurred, and you really contacted the person who betrayed you? What didn't you recognize in him? That is, of course, the very first thing is to try to understand the other person. And why did he betray you, right? Or, well, so to speak, if you're there. Or maybe he can betray. And the other one. Another medicine. Well, who can tell you what kind of medicine? Hope is absolute. No, but this is practical. Yoga. No, well, like the South. Of the South. Speech. Steam room. The steam room too. Travel. No, look, remember, meditation, let there be all living beings now. Notice how tricky this meditation is made. If you do it, you have an object for whom you are doing, can go from friends to neutral, to enemies. From neutral enemies to friends. And you don't care, do you? So that's how to survive jealousy. Burning, yes, went up to the most, this is the most, a dagger up to the hilt. This is certainly meditation on the heart centers, the exact opposite of this feeling. What is the exact opposite?
Love.
Love, trust, openness, wishing happiness. Here. What else would you light and advise? Well, of course, pair yoga, yes, meditation, everything that we are doing now. It really helps, friends, it really helps. To begin.
The fact that you once said in one of the lectures that you need to meditate before the emotion arose, respectively, first of all, and not allow situations that will provoke you while you are weak.
Absolutely correct, yes. That is, look, if you suspect that, let's say you are jealous, and you suspect that if jealousy captures you, you can't do anything about it, then you begin to wage a guerrilla struggle first.
захватит, вы ничего с этим поделать не сможете, то вы начинаете вести сперва партизанскую борьбу.
You don't directly encounter these things.
Не сталкивайтесь с этими вещами.
You kind of avoid those, well, provocations.
Как бы избегаете тех, провокаций.
That is, as it were. Well, do not provoke yourself to the fact that, you know, if you encounter, say, one or another phenomenon there, then you will wake up. You start to avoid and gain time. During this time, you begin to work with your heart center, and over time, these tight grips, the grip is hard, gradually begins to, well, relax. In other words, the main thing in this respect is to gain time. In general, if a person does yoga, then time works for him, no matter what he encounters. The main thing is to win this time, and not to break firewood, not to kill everyone. Do you know how many people are killed in a fit of jealousy? A nightmare. The horror. And moreover, very sane people suddenly lose control over themselves, and kill themselves and others, and a lover, and a wife. And in general there is still,
Любовника и жену, и вообще там еще.
here. That is now another question.
Теперь другой вопрос.
But what if the situation is reversed? You are faced with jealousy. You are not jealous, but say, your husband or your wife, or someone else is jealous. What should I do then? Yes. Here they are. At one of the field seminars, we had such a wonderful practice when if something suddenly goes wrong, it is necessary. Falling, yes. So, face down and say to myself, I'm fine, I don't have any problems because I died. Yes, sometimes to save, yes, please.
It seems to me that all these tips that we have listed before, when we ourselves experience jealousy, they actually really fit people when they are jealous.
Yeah, good.
Checked. In other words, you have no idea what it is, it's funny. That is there, maybe they are conceived. But it's like karma. I'm sorry.
Well, actually, yes. Started because of possible reasons. If I'm not serving. What's that? Am I giving a reason? If there are reasons for real jealousy, let's say maybe I'm thinking something about it. This is the power of consciousness. This is the power of imagination. It, you know, finishes everything in terrible pictures. The wife was late at work, and there's already an orgy in her head, you know. With the participation of his wife. Here. Someone else has something. Well, in the same vein, I wanted to say that to show as much as possible, well, to open the situation to a person so that he sees that there is still no reason for jealousy. It's easy to say, you know.
That he wants to accept jealousy.
On the contrary, it seems to me that even more will arise if you know as much as possible.
Not necessarily. Everyone has their own.
Trying. A man that you are devoted. What's up, part-time students? Write to us, what do you think about jealousy? If you have to accept, it seems to me, the situation. Accept it. In the comments, in the hall. Let's take turns. You will tell. The part-time students did not hear.
It seems to me that it's easy to work both from the standpoint of the macrocosm and the microcosm, right? That is, you do everything in your power and explain to a person when it's at the peak of the fortress, when he shouts there or something else. But how? You are this.
Already shot.
Calm down, then sit down, talk normally, clarify the situation as much as possible. What you think, what you feel. For my part, should I work out meditations there or something else? That is, there is a macrocosm to work with and a microcosm visualization.
Come on, over here, over here. Come on. Share.
Forming your own experience. Yes, it doesn't work, but I understand the case.
Mine works. No, yes, let's do that. There are many universes, let's take turns. And you too, come on.
The correct remark is that you need to wait until it all settles down and find the most favorable period in general, in order to at least submit something to your head, because at this point it's useless at all. We just need to retire as soon as possible, and everyone in general, here, otherwise it will be bad. And then, in general, it seems to me that it is necessary to explain in this way. But you understand that this reaction, it does not depend on me nor on my behavior, nor on what you know or do not know. That's your problem. That is, if a person is aware of this and wants to work with the problem, something can be done. But if he's like a drug addict, he doesn't want to, you can't cure him. Here, in my opinion, the same stuff is just, seriously, if a person says, yes, yes, I have it. I can't do anything about it. I'm proud of it. You can't do anything to him, even if you die.
No, well, yes, that's another conversation. Yes, please.
Leave the place.
Yes, it's better to go out. Get out.
Well, honestly, I have such a position. Let's say that all the problems that exist, well, as if they happen to us, yes, they actually change if we change ourselves. Situations change. Perhaps at some point we were jealous ourselves, and the fact that a person is jealous of us returns to us. Maybe if we analyze it too, look at it, somehow get rid of it, then we won't have this boomerang coming back.
Well, it's like this, actually. Please. Come on, speak out. This?
Just in addition to the machine statement, as it were, that if a person turns to us in such a situation, with such a facet, that he is jealous of us, yes, then this is essentially our negative karma that we are faced with this. That is, it means that somewhere out there, either in this life or in previous ones, we were either jealous ourselves, or we did some such situations. In other words, it would have been a good karma for us, yes, we would not have encountered this. So, well, as I said, to work here, well, as I see it, only from the inside, if with a microcosm, it's some kind of visualization, meditation. If it's with the macrocosm, then it's with a person. When he is as calm as possible, when he is adequate for a conversation, then talk, explain, trust, develop common trust. Find some points of mutual contact, that is, well, again, like everyone else. There may be different situations.
Wonderful. Yes. Yeah, come on.
But, for example, meditation on a partner as an absolute. They say that he reveals himself as the absolute. Here, it is possible thereby, maybe he can get rid of the need.
Yes, friends, actually, but this is a separate topic. Of course, it's best. Yes, please. Yeah, now.
I believe that there is such a thing as communicating with a person not directly, but first, well, how to say, introduce the person yourself, and communicate with him, explain to him. And there is such a thing as a person, in principle. He hears when you communicate with him, well, I mean, like on the phone, right? That is, only he is not there on the phone, but you imagine that you are communicating, like a visualization. Then he's already things, and it seems to me
That you have broadcasts. That you don't have a broadcast. The halt is only now. Well, let's wait for now. Thank you, yes. We are waiting until it connects. So. You listen, feet. That's who will perform the feat for us with these broadcasts. Well, did it work? No. Oh, that's it, wonderful. Who else has something? Come on. Yeah, please. Love. Are there any firm fellow students? Yes. And is it possible to put an equal sign between he doesn't love me and jealousy? Or she doesn't love me and is jealous? Well, you see, he loves me or he doesn't love me. And this is actually a very good one. You can work with this normally. Why? Because, yes, he doesn't love me, but he is devoted to me. Or he loves, but faithfully. You see, here is the factor of devotion in this sense, deeper than the factor of love or jealousy. That is, if there is a loyalty factor, then the superstructure, you know, I love, I hate, I'm jealous, I'm not jealous. It's already at the top. I say again, why loyalty? Here too, again, I'm going back to Bhakti Yoga. We will definitely have seeds for it. Sometimes it is said that in Hakta, it is love, not friends. There are a variety of methods in hacking. You are an object to which you are devoted, or you can love him, or dislike him, or scold him, but be devoted to him. Because everything is coming, and in fact, if we talk about married couples, then this is the couple where there is mutual devotion. Sooner or later, everything becomes good for them.
То вот та пара, где есть преданность взаимная, рано или поздно у них все хорошо становится.
But the couple who do not have devotion, falling in love quickly disappears, love too.
Любовь тоже.
I mean, it's like this, right? Only loyalty remains. Do you understand? And well, I ask so. Who else did you want?
And then it passed.
Yes, of course, yes.
I madly adore practice, and will become of the yoga of falling in love, and yes, I probably don't remember the details right now. If I have jealousy brewing, then I try to look at a woman through his eyes of a man, or I remember the meditation I am her. If it concerns jealousy from the other side, but I try not to allow this, and always try. Well, as if honesty is important, and it is important to agree to do, well, your other half. And if there is a factor of consciousness of a new consent, then well, somehow here are the moments of jealousy, they are somehow here.
Yes, friends, in fact, look, yes, I asked you all to speak out for this long discussion. This is actually the hardest question. You remember, yes, that the heart center is critical for modern civilization. On the other hand, in order to master it and use practices that accelerate yoga there, it is necessary to work with the negative manifestation of this chakra.
Работать вот с отрицательным проявлением этой чакры.
And, well, first of all, you remember the previous ones. In the previous chakras, we said that there are different methods. Well, first of all, the whole chakra that is higher, as a rule, controls the chakra that is lower. And if you pinch the previous and subsequent chakra, then at least something can be done there.
Там хоть что-то можно сделать.
That's on the one hand. But there are, as you know, more fundamental views on, but if you like, life and attitude, or the danger of future jealousy.
Взгляды на, ну, если угодно, на жизнь и на отношения или к опасности.
Imagine, yes, if jealousy has already arisen, and the situation is already developing, that's one thing. And imagine you don't have, say, a husband or wife right now, or there isn't any favorite job, or something that you would be jealous of. And here there is one, as the vaccination practitioners say. You don't know, maybe you're jealous, or maybe you're not jealous at all. But do I need to be safe? It is necessary. And you begin to build the right attitude for the rest of your life.
Правильное отношение ко всей своей дальнейшей жизни.
That is, you immediately give yourself such an attitude, yes, that you understand the nature of things.
Природу вещей.
And here it is correctly said here, let's say, from the practice of yoga, falling in love, if we are talking about a man and a woman, then you understand that, in fact, as if my wife is the absolute itself, the goddess Sri herself, who in her mercy can come through one body, then through another. That is, then your emphasis shifts from the other person, because the other person, he is not guilty of anything, right? To a higher superstructure, to his higher self, and to the absolute himself.
На его высшее я и на самого абсолюта.
And that's why there is such a long period of Brahmacharya, again in India, there in the cradle.
Брахмачарьи, опять же, в Индии там люди.
That is, in fact, early marriages in general were not welcomed in Vedic times.
Времена
That's the age of 24. That's when you can think about something. And so that you prepare for a variety of situations, including the situation of possible jealousy.
В том числе и к ситуации возможной ревности.
And they give a variety of meditations there. Well, this is another topic, of course, another yoga. Here we just don't have time to touch it anymore. But as with any emotion, friends, you remember that, first of all, you need to buy time, and secondly, do not let the emotion capture you.
Дать эмоции захватить себя.
Because it's one thing, you feel jealousy, and it's inside you. And another thing is, in a fit of jealousy, you grab a brick there and start killing everyone right and left. Yes, both the right and the guilty. Or do some nonsense. Because a woman in a fit of jealousy can do such a thing, which is generally terrible. Or a man. And as a matter of fact, well, how would you remember? That's the most important thing. It's at least a few seconds to gain time.
Самое главное — это хотя бы небольшой, несколько секунд выиграть время.
Because, like any emotion, the strength of any emotion is in its suddenness.
Эмоции такое, вот в её внезапность
You're just not ready.
не готова.
She picks you up and carried you. That you didn't mess up. But even if you don't break the firewood, you will still suffer, terribly suffer. And of course, all the practices associated with the Anahata chakra, such as wishing happiness to all living beings. But everything we did, it will, how should I tell you, distract you from the aspect of jealousy. And push directly the opposite of jealousy, openness, trust, love.
Ревности и наталкивать на прямую противоположность ревности, открытости, доверию, любви.
That is, there is such a rule in yoga that it is not to fight the negative, but to strengthen the positive.
А усиливать позитив.
Because the more you think about jealousy, the stronger it will be for you in these.
Она вас будет в этих
Tighten the swamp.
болото затягивать.
And here it is just necessary to fight not with the fact that I am not jealous, no, but that I am open, I trust. But you see what's the matter, it's just a declaration, it's hard. Some feelings of emotions are also needed here. And here, including all these exercises that we have done with you today, they weaken the grip of jealousy.